Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. You know, good old OO is a friend of our good old times. And as a good lawyer, he knows what it means to die intestate. So in other words, he was here to make an application for letters of administration or for an intestate. But we can understand where he's coming from.
By the way, he comes from Tororo.
But he knows what it takes for letters of administration to be granted to an applicant. And I'm afraid his application has very many voids that render it void ab initio. It collapses, therefore. Not only Speaker, the report from the chairperson is good, and I want to appreciate him for that effort. Absorptive capacity.
Honorable members, you can't even kill out for local government.
Challenges of release, absorption, staff recruitment, corruption, connivancy, ghost workers, pension challenges, all speak to almost an intestate situation that the good OO was trying to explain. And, you know, it's not part of the mandate of the committee to give a verdict on the functionality, feasibility, and later on, the viability of decentralization, Honorable Speaker. And I want to invite the House that probably this 11th Parliament, beyond the general debate we've had over the last 10 plus years I've been here, we have never made a proper diagnosis of this problem. But the cancer has been eating deep, deep, and deep until now. It is eating away at the bone marrow. Honorable Speaker. And I have no doubt this patient is a cripple sooner than later. We need to have a very potent conversation as to whether decentralization as a policy in the way it is crafted is viable. I had an informal conversation before here with the good general here about decentralization. And we were speaking about the several local governments we created, the small entities, under the guise of taking services closer to the people. So instead of taking services, we actually took corruption closer to the people. We decentralized the corruption. Corruption is nearer to the people than the services. And you see, when you ask the ordinary man, he's staring corruption. If local governments were an equation and we have variables, corruption will be a permanent variable. And you need a bulldozer to solve that equation. Right, Honorable Speaker, I want to invite this House. I hear both sides of the House are discussing constitutional and electoral reforms. On my side, sooner than later, I'll table to the country what we are proposing. And I want to invite legislators who will be the final arbiters in this conversation to rethink the whole idea of devolution of powers. If we are serious about service delivery, in other countries, in other jurisdictions, where devolution is serious, there is even a formula for devolving funds to local entities that the center cannot even touch. Ours is open lax. If the Honorable Musasizi does not think well about me, my releases will come 10 days to end of financial and they return. That's how they work. You know? I'm not saying that he does it.
They return and they don't account for it.
Of course, that's another conversation, Honorable Speaker, and that's why we need to think of very serious reforms. You see, this is no longer a small, short-term problem. In planning, the good minister knows, when you have a long-term problem, you go for reforms. If short-term, you go for adjustment. This requires reform, including changing legislation. For instance, who said that we cannot alter the PFMA to demand that the returned funds become part of the next financial year for that entity? You know? What stops us from changing legislation to ensure that the monies that are returned become part of the ceiling for that entity the following financial year? As part of stopping the lamentation as legislators, a private member can move that and we change the legislation. There's no legal bar. In fact, the bar is Parliament.
Actually, that's why I often need a private member to move on the 3%. The 3%, we as Parliament should know what that 3% is being used for. But that does not stop us from passing what has been passed, because it has already gone. So we will need to pass what has already passed, and then we bring in an amendment to the Public Finance Management Act.
The information LOP. Information I wanted to give LOP is that while you are looking for ways and means of coming up with legal reform, we should address our minds to the supplementary budget we normally pass at the exit door of the financial year. We have raised that concern that we pass billions, sometimes even trillions, as we are doing now, at the exit door of the financial year. What happens to that money? Because most of them involve procurement, and with procurement, you have to go through PPDA regulations and so on. So there is no way that you can spend those trillions of shillings within a space of 1 month or 3 weeks. So we need to address our mind. And I think the Minister of Finance must come back to us and tell us that this is the money you passed before July, and this is how we spent it. Because that money just disappears. We have never been able to know what happens to the trillions of shillings we pass at the exit door of the financial year.
Thank you, ma'am. Rightly so. And part of that reform, right, Honourable Speaker, will relate to operationalizing the contingencies fund. When you operationalize it, you actually do not need the supplementary. The law is very clear. The supplementary is indiscipline, it's abuse. We need to find a way of stopping it. Finally, right, Honourable Speaker, I want to encourage colleagues here to become active on your district road fund committees, because the law makes you bona fide members of these committees. And amongst yourselves, you can choose a chair. Over the last 10 years, I've been very active on my district roads committee. 5 years ago, I chaired it, and I turned around the community. These 5 years, Dr. Abed Bwanika is the chair. But we follow every penny voted to Masaka for the roads fund. It's very small money. Please follow it. Get interested. Part of this is a bonanza for some of the technical people there. But part of the reason is because members of Parliament are lax in following the road fund. Get interested. You see a difference. You probably could come to Masaka and this is how we work. You can't touch it. You cannot. Every quarter we sit. Every quarter we evaluate what has been done. Every quarter we follow. We go and visit the roads physically to see what has been done. You cannot show us the roads on paper. No way.
And that's what they call oversight. That's one of your roles as members.
So I want to
of
encourage you,
Parliament.
because you are members of the Roads Committee as per the Road Fund Act. In fact, go and buy the booklet of the Act and read and see the kind of obligations that rest upon your shoulders as members of Parliament. This small money, before the Honorable Musasizi calls it and say it is potea, please go and supervise how it is used, because he needs it badly to do whatever God knows with it. But, Honorable Speaker, I hope at the end of this report, which I want to invite Parliament to adopt, we would follow up some of these recommendations, especially on areas of open abuse of public funds. And part of it is being condoned by recycling perennially corrupt public officers. You recycle them and make corruption endemic. And the cycle until they are retired. Just imagine retiring as declared corrupt, and every report says you are corrupt. Every other document, every page you open on a report in Parliament says you was here, you stole here, you stole there. So we need to follow up. And probably a timely Treasury memorandum will stand this report in its stead. Right, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.